Well, Insight is the Centre for Data Analytics. It's a Science Foundation Ireland funded research centre, and it brings together researchers from all around the country. So previously there were a number of research centres in Galway and in Cork and in Dublin, and they've now all come together under the Insight banner looking at next generation data analytics. And we work with a wide range of industry partners and government agencies to bring data analytics to society.
Now this morning your topic of your talk was about big data and small sensors. So specifically you started off talking about the data and you introduced the exabyte. Tell me what an exabyte is.
Well, people often wonder how much data there is out there, and there's a huge amount. But to really think about it, you need to think about things called exabytes. And an exabyte is essentially 20,000 times the printed material in the US Library of Congress. Or to put it another way, if you took all of the words ever spoken by human beings, that's about an exabyte worth of information. The really interesting thing is that we're creating an exabyte every 6 hours these days. So there's a huge amount of information being created.
How are we collecting this data?
It comes from many, many different sources. It comes from what we're doing online, it comes from the videos that we post, the tweets that we send, it comes from our exercise patterns if we're wearing Fitbits and Jawbones, it's coming from the books that we read and the music we listen to.
You talked about mobile devices, you described them as a sensor platform.
Yeah, this is the really interesting thing about mobile phones is they're phones and they're internet devices, but they're chock full of sensors as well. They have compasses, they have location sensors, they have light sensors, some of them have humidity sensors. So they know where we are, and to a large extent they also know what we're doing. And almost everything we do nowadays, there's data recorded on it and it's stored somewhere.
It's an explosion really though, isn't it, in the last 5-10 years or so in terms of that huge amount of personal data related to people. Do we know how to mine it? Do we know how to analyse it? What kind of developments are being made in that area?
I think from a technology point of view, we now know how to collect and store and archive that data. We've developed new technologies that allow us to identify the hidden patterns and extract the fleeting insights from all of that data. I think the big question now is how should we use all of this data? And sometimes we're not as responsible as we might be. And we need to recognize, for example, that a lot of the data is personal data. So how should we be using people's personal data, and how do we as a society want our personal data to be used? There's no doubt it can be used to great good, but maybe not so good as well.
With the proper safeguards and with aggregation and anonymization of data, some very interesting research can be done. You talked about the research into particular drugs and whether or not the people who used particular drugs suffered from particular side effects. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, it's surprising and powerful, but this work was done by researchers in Microsoft in the US, and they were able to show that by mining the query patterns that people were submitting to Bing, the Microsoft search engine, under certain conditions they were able to discover new drug interactions, and those interactions were subsequently shown to be clinically correct.
There are ethical considerations, and some of them were raised in the Q&A afterwards. Something that springs to mind with myself is Facebook's recent experiment, for example, where they took a subset of their users as a population, and they manipulated that population. There are ethical questions raised by that. So what's your view on it? There
are. I think what we need to realise first of all is that companies manipulate what we see all of the time. Most of these companies now are doing A/B testing, and most of the time A/B testing is about trying different ways of presenting information to us, changing the colour of the button here, moving a link to there. What Facebook did that was different was that they manipulated the news feed to change the emotional content of that news feed. And their hypothesis was that by doing that, they would change the mood of the person who was reading the news. And they were able to show that that's actually what happened. So when they filled my news feed with negative news items or negative messages and took out the positives, I felt more negative. When they filled my news feed with more positive messages, I felt more positive. Surprise, surprise. But of course, the problem here is that now I feel like they're manipulating my emotional state. And there was a sense that that was a step too far for many people. And I think there's right in that. You know, we have ethical guidelines for human subject tests and informed consent, etc., etc. The terms and conditions that you sign up to when you sign up to a site service like Facebook, that's not quite the same as getting informed consent for someone if you're manipulating their emotional state.
Are scientists, is there a tendency that scientists may feel like kids in a toy shop with this avalanche of rich data, as you say, that's we're only collecting now because of the mobile platforms that we carry around? It could be tempting at times to overstep those ethical boundaries.
I think that's right. It's just really difficult to get the balance right. I think at the same time, we don't want to not try new things because there are such great benefits to society if we try new things. And look at what has happened over the last 10 or 15 years and look at how all of our lives have been transformed to a large extent for the good. I think the healthcare profession stands to benefit hugely from this. We wouldn't want to stifle innovation that could help people to live safer, healthier, fairer lives. At the same time, we do need to be careful and we shouldn't rush to try something out just because we can. So I think we will learn lessons, we will make mistakes, but we will change what we do and hopefully good will come of that.
Professor Barry Smyth, thank you very much.
Thank you.